Hello, hello, everyone. Well, I am sorry for this slight delay, but in fact, we have had a bit of a problem because there's been a thunderstorm, and this thunderstorm cut us off completely. I didn't even manage to get my telephone to sort of hook it up. So anyhow, I'm here now and I am really pleased to be with you. So today, as per usual, is Materials Monday. So today on Materials Monday, what I wanted to do was speak about a few materials. So as you know, I'm not basically a vegan. Okay, I am just normal person, but I am a bit careful. I like animals. So, like a lot of you who like animals, we don't basically want to do anything which is harmful for them. I mean, I've seen many, like you, I expect, seen many documentaries which were quite scary. After which, I did pay attention to what I buy. I mean, I still do pay attention to what I buy and where I buy it. So I like to make sure that I know, at least for my food, exactly where it comes from. So I'm not saying I am lucky enough because I live in the countryside, so I don't have to just go to the supermarket. I can go to um, the farm and get my chicken, my eggs, my vegetables, and things to that extent. And we also have quite a good cow people. So, anyhow, what I wanted to see today is that there are some alternatives to materials which sort of vegan alternatives which should be taken into consideration as well, because it's not just harmful for the animals, but I believe it's also very harmful for us. And the one I wanted to start with today is leather. So, why is leather not good? So, you can say leather is obviously a natural material. Okay, so when I speak about leather, I am prioritizing not only safeguarding the animal, but above all, in this case, in leather, I am prioritizing the health of the person who uses it. So, and obviously the planet, because leather is not a particularly sustainable way of producing material which needs to be used to cover things or on our clothes. I mean, do we really need it? I mean, leather has been used through the centuries, but the leather which has been used through the centuries was a byproduct of a dead animal they would eat anyway. So I'm thinking of North American inhabitants. I'm thinking of all sorts of things through the centuries where we use leather, but leather is the byproduct of the meat they would have eaten anyway. So I'm going to have a look at first of all, why I am so obsessed with leather. So, leather, which I do not use personally myself much, is in fact a natural material. And so, by default, you would think it's healthy. But however, what we have to look at is how it is treated to become the natural piece of leather which we sit on or with which we use in our jackets. So there's this one chemical which I believe is the number one culprit in everything, and that's chromium. Okay, chromium is a chemical used in tanning, which is very, very, very harmful. It is a highly cancerogenic, and and cause us a lot of harm to us in general. Okay, so it is hazardous. It leads to bad respiratory problems. It causes irritation, and it is cancerogenous. So, where does this? Let's take a step back and see exactly where does this actually happen. So if I look down the process, the production processes, I'm a bit obsessed with the production process. So the hind of the animal, which is usually cows, goats, or sheep, is taken to the tanneries, and the first thing they have to do is remove all the hair or the fur. And this process is usually called the dehairing process. And how do they do this? They are soaked in water, and they remove, first of all, obviously all the dirt and all the blood, etc., etc. And then they are soaked in a lime solution, which is also chemical, and where they used sodium sulfide and calcium hydroxide, which is basically lime. So these are chemicals which can cause eye irritation, can be toxic when they are inhaled, and they can cause skin burns. Now, we know that who work in these traditional tanneries ought to have very strong protection. But this is what this hide is going through. Okay. Then, of course, these are treated again in other water with other kind of chemicals to neutralize this slime and to make the hide more flexible. So it's as if we are washing out with another chemical the negativity of the original lime. Okay, and also we want to make it flexible. Then comes the tanning. The actual tanning is what makes the skin durable through time and resist to decay. It still stays soft because we've gone through the deliming and the baiting, but the tanning is what makes it so that leather is not going to decompose like a piece of skin. Okay, it's going to make it durable, and this is where chromium comes in. Now, chromium comes in, and it is, as I said, highly cancerogenous, and it is very toxic. Then comes, I presume that they rinse it out. Now, there are ways of tanning which are natural, which come from the tree barks. Okay, so the barks of the trees. But apparently, this is what I read, this is what my research tells me, chemical. So this really is not sustainable economically, and also because of the amount of water. Because then we'll see this. We'll jump into this and see this whole process, what it means. So once we've tanned the leather and it becomes durable over time, what happens is that you have to dye it. Okay, so you dye it to achieve obviously the desired color that you want. And it has got to be worked with waxes and with oils and various methods to improve its softness and its suppleness. And then we go through the dyeing process. So this, as you can see, it goes through a lot of basins of water and of liquids, a lot of which accumulate toxic chemicals, which have then got to be treated and you've got to get rid of it. So where does it go? Where does this water with chemicals inside go? Now, This is I don't work in a tannery, but I've heard about this more than once, and I've visited a couple. And all I can say is these were traditional tanneries, and yes, you could feel obviously the intense chemical issue there. But above all, also tanneries use an incredible amount of water. And water really, really is now becoming gold. So we have an enormous amount of water, which we use, and then an enormous amount of water full of chemicals and which is therefore polluted with heavy metals like chromium that have then got to be put through a water waste process. So there's quite a significant amount of pollution there. Then, of course, there are the waste generated by the cuttings off, and of course the energy consumption. Okay. So, are there any alternatives? So it is a natural material, but it is not sustainable. But its production process is not sustainable. So as much as the raw material is natural, the end material is not something which I would say is healthy. Okay. So are there any other ways of producing which are healthier and which are more sustainable? Now, apparently there are, even for leather. So for real hind leather. There are a couple of factories I know of who have reduced significantly the amount of metals which they use. They have reduced by over 30% the amount of water which they use. So as soon as we have the opportunity, we will have them come on to our Materials Monday and have them explain themselves how they have turned such a unsustainable and toxic production process into something which is positive. Alternatively, this is why I said I am not a vegan, but there are some vegan products which I believe are interesting to look at because leather is it's his production process which is not good. So the two alternatives which I consider interesting are the cactus leather and mango leather. Now, I don't know too much about mango leather, but cactus leather is definitely something very interesting. Now, cactus leather comes from cactus, but in fact, the prickly pears of the cactus. Okay, so we've got two things here. A, it's not an animal. B, it comes from a plant which requires very little water to grow. Okay, and it is used through the fiber, so it's even in its how you work it to create this fiber, you use much less water than what you would for the normal hind. Now, this is one brand which I read about, and I don't know too much of the details, but they do mix the prickly pear, so the fibers which come out of the prickly pear, with a biopolymer. And this creates the leather, which is quite shiny, which is quite supple. I'm not sure about its durability. Okay, I'm not sure how durable it is with respect to a normal hind. What I am sure is that it's definitely more sustainable and definitely less toxic. So if you really want that leather effect, Okay, mango leather or cactus leather are something which ought to be looked at. So this is what concerns leather, and I think we will delve a bit deeper into leather again in a few weeks' time. The other alternative, okay, which I don't think basically there is an alternative, to tell you the truth, is wool. So I know vegans, true vegans, are convinced that although it is a natural material, it's not a vegan material, because for the most part, the husbandry of rearing the sheep is not exactly gentle. So let's remember that wool is a natural fiber. It has a lot of fantastic natural characteristics. So we know that it is very flexible, very flexible. It can be wound up to about 20,000 times without breaking. Okay, so it's used also for insulation in the walls, and then of course also it is a natural fire retardant, which is very good. And it is hyperallergenic, so according to professional healthcare, and it's resistant. It's resistant to germs, it's resistant to mold, it's resistant to mildew, all of which cause allergic responses. And it absorbs water. That's why basically it is a fire retardant, because it naturally absorbs water. So these are all fantastic characteristics about wool. Okay, so we know that if we can, even in garments, okay, it is always better to use wool than even these most fantastic tech garments we have for the outside, which are great because you say, oh, they're light, okay, I can fold them, they don't get soaked, but wool is the best alternative. The next thing, however, that we have to think about is that, as I was saying, the husbandry of wool. Okay, so hang on, but there's one thing I wanted to say before I go on to the husbandry: is how do we clean the wool? Okay, so there is something very similar to leather in that it's got to be washed. And you can, however, clean the wool without putting chemicals in it. So it can go through a lot of washing basins and rinse that many, many times. And you can even get a GOTS certificate, that is a Global Organic Textile Standard. Okay. It can do that. Okay. But to do that, it has got to have two requirements. For it to be truly organic, okay, no chemicals are to be used. So no chemicals, not only in the washing of the fiber, but also no chemicals such as veterinary medicines to prevent and to treat against lice, against fleas, against intestinal parasites, all these which are medications which we would usually give to the animal, which maybe, it's like we're going to the doctor and getting a synthetic and not an homeopathic medicine. But in order for it to get its GOT standards, this cannot be used. So why is it important for me to tell you this? So what happens is that obviously this is going to make it much more economically expensive for the rearer, for the husbandry of the sheep, because they're going to have to do a lot more work to clean up and look after the animals. And under no condition, okay, at the moment, is there enough GOTS wool around to meet the demand for actually producing woolen garments and woolen fabrics. So it's just really a minority of the volume which is on the market. So what you have to do is, yes, you're going to have to pay more for it. Okay. And beyond the GOTS, there's another thing which I think is really important to look at, because maybe it doesn't have GOTS. Okay. So there you've got to be careful about, there are maybe other standards which can be met to check that the wool, so the fleece, is actually treated naturally, so without added chemicals, but the sheep do have their medications. I don't know, I'll have to check into that. But the other thing which is very important to notice about sheep, and not only about sheep, I beg your pardon, because we're also talking about goats and mohair wool, and that is the treatment of the actual animal. Okay, so we've got to remember that sheep are basically animals which live on a prairie. Okay, they are very docile. So when they get called up, okay, they get gathered, and they have got to go and get sheared. The people who shear the sheep are usually paid by weight of the fleece which they actually cut off. And they are not particularly delicate, okay, with the animals. So they do tend to be a bit rough. The animals are terrified, and they really just throw them around and risk breaking their legs and things to that extent. So another certification I would look at is, in fact, and it's called, I'm just going to read it here, Animal Welfare Approval. It's called the AWA, AWA certification. Okay. So, yeah, this is something that means that the way they rear their animals, they are conscious of the animals, and they do look after it in a human manner. Okay. So this is it, basically. So this is all for today. I did want to speak to you also about silk, because no one talks about silk, but traditional silk rearing of the silkworms. And I saw a documentary one, and I was quite shocked. Especially is where I live here, there used to be, a few centuries ago, a lot of silk farms. And they used to, to get the worms out, they used to boil them alive. So now there are other methods, but you still have to check. Okay. So this is all for today. I just wanted to speak about the leather, the process of the leather, and the wool. Now, I didn't give you an alternative to wool, in fact, because I really don't think there is an alternative to wool, except to make sure that you have a GOTS. The only alternative to wool would be, in fact, jute and linen. Now, I don't know how warm that is in winter, especially as I would not want to use furs of any kind. I'd stick to the wool, possibly GOTS. Okay, well, that's all for now. Thanks a lot. It's gone a bit dark here. Sorry about that. And I'll see you next week. Bye. Oh, don't forget to subscribe to the Biophilic Hub. I'll put it in the biophilichub.com.